I can tell you absolutely as soon as you start saying it, because it was the time I felt like I had a shockwave go through my body. I'm sitting in a chair at the command center. I'm at the front of this, large command center. We got video screens up on the front. I'm at a U-shaped desk. I'm watching all the video screens at the front. It's probably about 12:53. The riot began, and I saw my officers quickly being overpowered. Picked up the phone, called, what, luckily, first call was the MPD and they sent me some assistance right away. But by law, I have to get permission to bring in federal resources and resources for my men and women. So I called the Capitol Police Board, which I'm still by law, even in emergency, you have to get permission. Called Speaker Pelosi, Sergeant at Arms. He had permit. He had the ability to give me permission, but he wouldn't. He wanted to run it up the chain. I couldn't believe it. I've got liaisons from the Capitol Police Board sitting right behind me watching the same thing I'm watching. I can't get permission to bring in any federal resources for my officers, watching them being beaten, struck, protesters running past them. I call the Senate Sergeant at Arms and I get denied again, repeatedly.
Before January 6th, 2021, Stephen Sund spent 30 years preparing for the worst days in American history. This conversation begins before the moment that defined him, along with many others, and ends where his authority disappeared.
I've been thinking that a lot of the guests, Steve, that we have on Heroes Behind the Badge, they are known for that one day. I think we talked about that in previous interviews. Oh yeah, Steve Sund, he's that January 6th guy, and I've always felt that's not totally fair, because in your case, there's a 30-year career that very few people could ever endure. Policing in DC, as we've talked, is like nothing else in the world. That is a unique policing situation. You were chasing kidnappers, homicide offenders, cop killers for years. You helped plan 30 special national security events, 30, including 5 inaugurations. And on September 11th, you were asked to go to the White House to consult with the White House and Secret Service to coordinate a response for 9/11. You worked alongside Secret Service for years. Every living president you have helped protect. So you've had barricade situations, all the things that real cops do. You had all that. And sometimes that gets lost. And I don't want that to get lost today. The hostage rescues, the standoffs, responded to the active shooter, like the congressional shooting situation at the baseball field, the Navy Yard. So today I want to talk a little bit about the man behind the badge. It's about kind of what actually happened in your time in the complicated policing atmosphere of Washington, D.C., trying to stand between order and chaos. But all the time in Washington, D.C., the history is watching. History is watching. So I thought I'd ask you one particular question. And as history tries to reduce your career, your reputation to a single day, okay, what do you wish that people understood about the real man behind the badge?
So I'll take this, before I go into my personal story, I think you have 879,000 police officers out there.
Yes.
These are men and women that have raised their right hand, sworn an oath. My story is going to be just one of those. And when you think about it, I was just, I was just thinking about what you went over and picturing a lot of the things that I'd been involved with. And it's been an incredible career. But, every police officer is going to have just incredible stories that they're going to have with them. They're going to go home. And ultimately, when you think about it, you go back and, when we're long gone and, people are looking back on it, what will they remember of
Sure.
the individuals? And for me, it's my personal, everybody becomes a police officer for different reasons. But for me, it was a lot of just personal satisfaction, and a lot of personal satisfaction that I've gotten out of it. So for me, when I look back and I run into people now, and it's really interesting because you had mentioned that, oh, you're that guy. There were so many times that right after January 6th, the first year and a half, you'd run into people, and as soon as they found out, you get this funny look like, oh, yeah, you're him, and then the conversation would change.
Yeah.
that has taken a 180-degree change with me,
Mhm.
which is really interesting. Um, I have people go, "Oh wow, hey, I've heard about you. You're that guy. Wow, tell
You
me
are
your
that
story. Tell
guy.
me what it was really like." And it's just a complete difference. There was times I was sitting in this exact chair. Think about it. We're 5 years now.
Yeah.
Um, 4 years ago, and it was pretty damn dark. I'd lost friends. I was trying to
Right.
figure out what's going on. I'm putting this after action together, and trying to figure out what happened. Never thought I'd get to the point where we are now. Complete, like I said, 180-degree change. Where now I'm being asked to speak on crime around the United States, crime globally. I was just interviewed on the Bondi Beach
Oh yeah.
assault.
Yeah.
The terrorist attacks taking place overseas, or some of the Christmas markets. So it's taking that experience that you just talked about and now relating it to bigger issues. I mean, I was just involved in the U.S. Saudi Investment Forum 2025 at the Kennedy Center, November, asked to do a security plan for part of the event, which was something else. Wow, it's so you're seeing people are now bypassed that guide from January 6th, and now they realize what happened. They realize the efforts you took, and they're like, hey. That's the guy we want. That's so it's changed. So what do I want people to take away
Yeah.
is a real understanding of what happened. Take the time, research it, don't believe one side or the other. Whatever I tell you, go back, research what I'm telling you. Do your research and make a critical decision, make an informed decision on what you're finding out. Now, I tell this to students nowadays when I talk to classes. It's important that people learn how to think critically, because honestly, too many people pay attention to social media and make a decision on social media without analyzing the information they're getting, and then
Yes.
they jump to these conclusions that just increases the division we're dealing with in the country. So
Wow.
ultimately, study the facts and let the facts speak for themselves, and that's enough for me.
That's a great answer. Yeah. Is there any part of your career, as you look back on your highly successful career, is there any part of the career that really stays with you, that when the noise finally quiets down, everything settles down? Is there any one or two things that you can point to and say, yeah, that defined me?
Wow, that defined me. I'll tell you the call from the White House. We had the first plane hit on 9/11. I
Yes.
got a call to remember Steve Woodard. Sad to say that a special agent has passed away.
Yeah.
And then we're on the phone when the second plane hit, and that's when they called me down to go to their emergency operations center. That is something I'll always take with me and remember. That's something. But it's interesting, and probably every cop has this, where you drive through the area that you've been assigned to your career, and you drive through and you look, oh, hey, that happened here, or that happened here.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys remember years ago, we had a guy that drove a tractor into Washington, D.C., into
Yes, I
one of
do.
the reflecting ponds, and held D.C., downtown D.C., literally 150 yards from the White House, hostage for 3 days.
I remember that.
Yeah, we were involved with that with Park Police. It was my SWAT team. But I was working with Park Police, trying to work a peaceful resolution to that, which we ultimately did. But I couldn't believe morning after morning waking up and going, wow, we're still dealing with tractor guy. So there's just different areas I look at as I drive through the city, whether it's Anacostia, whether it's Martin Luther King Avenue, whether it's 46 place. Wow, what a fun place, where you just remember, as you're going through, you
Sure.
remember the chases, you remember the shootings. So it's just interesting stuff. But there's a number of things I'll always think about. Right after January 6th, the first year and a half, you'd run into people, and as soon as they found out, you get this funny look like, oh, yeah, you're him, and then the conversation would change.
Yeah.
That has taken a 180-degree change with me,
Mhm.
which is really interesting. I have people go, "Oh wow, hey, I've heard about you. You're that guy. Wow, tell
You
me your
are that
story. Tell
guy.
me what it was really like." And it's just a complete difference. There was times I was sitting in this exact chair. Think about it. We're 5 years now.
Yeah.
Um, 4 years ago, and it was pretty damn dark. I'd lost friends. I was trying to
Right.
figure out what's going on. I'm putting this after action together, and trying to figure out what happened. Never thought I'd get to the point where we are now. Complete, like I said, 180-degree change, where now I'm being asked to speak on crime around the United States, crime globally. I was just interviewed on the Bondi Beach
Oh yeah.
assault. The terrorist attacks taking place overseas, or some of the Christmas markets. So it's taking that experience that you just talked about and now relating it to bigger issues. I mean, I was just involved in the U.S. Saudi Investment Forum 2025 at the Kennedy Center, November, asked to do a security plan for part of the event, which was something else. Wow, it's so you're seeing people are now bypassed that guide from January 6th, and now they realize what happened. They realize the efforts you took, and they're like, hey, that's the guy we
Hey,
want.
Steve, we're doing this interview right around the 5-year anniversary of January 6, 2021, the riot at the Capitol. You were chief of police on that day. And you've written a book. And I want our audience to understand that this is the definitive piece of work. If you want to know what really happened on January 6th, what led up to it, the aftermath, all the good things that happened that day, the heroism of the Capitol Police and other jurisdictions, and how they were able to protect the Capitol and prevent any member of Congress or staff from being injured or killed. And I want to get that out there, first of all, because we're not going to be able to cover all the details in this book. We've already interviewed you in a great 3-part series a year ago about what happened on January 6th, and we talked about your book. But in hindsight, okay, here we are 5 years later. I'd like you to just reflect on January 6th, the lead up, the aftermath. What was your toughest challenge, the toughest moment that you faced on January 6th? And then we'll talk about, some of the mistakes that were made and some of the lessons that we've learned.
What you've heard so far isn't the riot. It's the moments before authority mattered most and failed to arrive. In the next episode, we step back into the command center and ask the question that still haunts this story. What happens when leaders are held responsible but denied the power to act?